Morning.
Morning.
Can I ask you if you noticed anything unusual in that manoeuvre you just made?
Was a totally blind turning, officer.
You mean like needing to stop to see if anything was coming?
I can only say I'm sorry.
I'm afraid I might have to insist you say a bit more than that, sir. Hello, Rose. He'll be on the Continental lorries again then, is he?
Never you mind.
What exactly do you intend doing, Constable?
Sergeant, sir. Sergeant Beck.
I don't intend to be uncooperative at all, Sergeant. You can surely see that.
Do it often, do you?
What?
Park in the woods.
It's a fine view.
Licence, sir, please.
Mr. Pendle has established relations with the European community.
Rose.
Charlie Pendle, is it?
Charles, yes.
The builder?
Developer.
New secondary modern, year before last?
It wasn't his fault. Load of cowboys on that job, weren't they? Turn your back, they did all sorts in that cement. No wonder half of it fell down.
Rosie.
That's what you said.
You may be hearing from us, sir.
May?
Probably.
You had to tell him who I was, of course.
Well, make him think, Charlie. I mean, you're known, aren't you? Well, that cricket pavilion for the British Legion. Well, you've got regard. You won't do anything.
Do your blouse up.
No time for breakfast, then?
Can't all have it laid on for us in the morning.
Morning.
Morning, Mal.
Morning.
Didn't your mother ever tell you about elbows on the table, Jesse?
Correspondence, ma'am.
You got crumbs down your front.
There's been a disturbance in Saracen Street. Gallagher's just radioed in.
You're not going to tell me anything more?
And bailiff went to number 49 with an eviction order. Some of the local residents didn't approve. When Gallagher got there, they scattered. They'd said about the bailiff.
What happened?
Somebody poured a container of an as yet unidentified liquid over him from an upstairs window.
I don't find that funny, Sergeant. Sounds very much like assault to me. Where's Gallagher now?
He's still in Saracen Street.
Well, I shall want to know more about it than that, Joseph. You've missed a bit.
You will, ma'am. The bailiff's on his way in.
Mr. Knowles, isn't it?
Yes, unexpected. Those radios, like your other fellow had, generally available, are they? Very handy they'd be in my line of work, you know. Cut out a lot of unnecessary misunderstanding if I had direct access to a bit of recognised authority. I'm the bailiff, you see.
I know that, Mr. Knowles.
I approach each door with a strictly neutral attitude. That has to be said. Misunderstandings make me nervous.
I think Inspector Darbley would like a word, sir.
All this'll have to be typed out when I get back.
Come in.
Mr. Knowles, Ma'am.
Oh, yes, Mr... Please sit down, Mr. Knowles.
Let me back tire down, didn't they? Call themselves women. Hooligans more like. One of them had a ferret.
Did you recognise any of them?
Vicious things.
We shall find whoever's responsible, Mr. Knowles.
Never stop biting till the teeth meet, you know. Ferrets.
Yes. Well, can we start at the beginning, do you think? You went to serve an eviction notice at 49 Saracen Street.
Yes, a Mr. and Mrs. Williams Stamp. And most of the rest of the terrace are gone by now. Sensibly, I might add. The whole area's up for redevelopment. I mean, what's the point of them hanging on when they'll have to go at the end? Anyway, I knocks on the door, all polite. Even lifted me out when she came to the window. The ways of doing these things. Next thing I know, well...
Yes, I see. So you're saying it was this Mrs. Stamp who threw the water over you?
Oh, yes, yes. I'm used to it. I had a trained parrot set about me once. Now, that surprises you, doesn't it? I couldn't tell anybody that, you know. It has to be somebody trained to understand.
Mr. Knowles, the others, the women in the street.
An African grey.
What?
The parrot. An African grey. Most books recommend them as ideal pets. I have to say, that's not been my experience.
About the women, Mr. Knowles.
All over they were, shouting. Words I wouldn't want to hear from a woman again, I can tell you.
Did they actually attack you?
Block the way. I don't like ferrets. Anything that kills rabbits can't be up to much. Harmless creatures, rabbits.
Mr. Knowles, I have to know whether you were actually assaulted.
Could have been, easily. No, your lad arrived, didn't he? They took off them.
And did you recognise any of them?
No. I'd know that bloody ferret if I saw it again, though.
Well, Mr. Knowles, I can tell you here and now there will be no further incidents of this kind.
I shall need assurances, you know. One bobby with a transistor in his buttonhole's not much help.
Leave it in my hands, Mr. Knowles. I intend looking into it personally. I'll be in touch.
Yes.
George, is Joseph there? Good. Ask him to bring a car around the front, will you? Oh, and tell Gallagher to wait at Saracen Street. Purely on a matter of procedure, Constable, in cases of assault, I should prefer to hear the details from the officer at the scene rather than from the victim later. Does that sound unreasonable?
He wouldn't get out of the car, ma'am. He'd locked himself in and kept insisting he was going to report the matter to you personally.
Did you ask him nicely? I realise you only have one pair of hands, David, but you could have called for assistance.
I radioed into Sergeant Beck to tell him Mr. Knowles was on his way. He'd a flat tyre, he shouldn't even been driving on it. Well, I must have turned my back for a moment. Next thing I knew, there he was. Gone.
It wasn't exactly his tyre I was thinking about. Mr. Knowles was attacked while serving a court order. Doesn't that strike you as vaguely illegal?
They were all running when I arrived, ma'am. I just found him sitting in his car mumbling something about women. He couldn't remember anything else except he reckons one of them had a ferret.
Have a look about, Joseph. Somebody must know something. Mrs. Stamp?
Might be.
I'm Inspector Darbley, Hartley Police. I'd like to talk to you, please.
You got what he deserved. Kept banging. After I told him to go away.
Could I come in, do you think?
No one comes in.
Just me.
Local, are you?
I like to think so now.
He wasn't either.
It wouldn't take long. I promise to leave whenever you say.
All right. Come in, then.
Thank you.
This is Mr. Stamp.
You on the ambulances?
I'm a police inspector, Mr. Stamp. My name's Darbley, Jean Darbley.
Go on.
You're welcome to sit for a while.
Would you like some tea?
Well-
There's shortbread.
Thank you.
Sofa's comfiest.
What you did to Mr. Knowles, you know, was technically an assault.
Not likely to go back then, is he?
Mrs. Stamp, about the house. I think perhaps I should explain a few facts. It may be that you don't really know the true situation. There might be some confusion.
They want us out. We're not going. No confusion.
I'm afraid the law says you must go.
Don't know nothing about that.
Well, you must have had various letters from the council.
I never read them. I send the stamps to my sister in Canada, Ontario. She collects.
The whole terrace is due for demolition. They're going to redevelop the area. You'll have been offered alternative accommodation.
But we don't need no alternative. We've already got a house.
The property here is very old.
So are we.
Everything must come to an end, Mrs. Stamp, sooner or later. That's how things are.
That's how some folk want it to be more like. We've been in this house since we were wed. Never a day out of it, really. Weren't keen on holidays, Dad and me. This is where our lives were. That's a sort of law, isn't it?
I really wish it was that simple.
We're making it simple, lass. We're not going.
Have you any family?
No.
Did you really have horses, Mr. Stamp?
Oh, them were my dad's. He started the business, I carried on. Like father, like son, don't they say? And so it were, right up until... Oh, grand old fellas they were. Zack, we called that one. 6 we had. I cut 'em down, well, I had to. Then I bought the motor. It were the first petrol hearse in town, it were. Oh, it were a good business. You get to bury a lot of folk over the years.
I can understand you must have a reason, Mr. Stamp. A reason for not wanting to go.
Folks don't need no reason for sticking to their own hearths.
Can I come and see you again, perhaps?
But you haven't had your tea.
It was very nice of you, Mr. Stamp, but I really must be going.
Oh, take a shortbread then. It'll come in handy.
Thank you.
You can come, but it won't make no difference.
You'll stop them throwing us out then, will you?
I'll make some inquiries, Mr. Stamp, and then I'll come back, all right? Goodbye, Mrs. Stamp.
She'll find out.
How then? Who's to tell her?
She's the sort. Her sort always find out. What would they do if they found out? Lock us up, would they?
What did you find out?
A bit of a conspiracy of silence, ma'am. Gallagher's still at it.
There's a door towards the rear of the front room. All the houses must have been the same.
Cellar. It'll have been the cellar, ma'am.
Bolted and barred. When I looked at it, I don't know, something prickled. Under the collar, you know? You know the feeling?
Got the money down there, I expect. The old uns round here aren't very keen on banks.
Right. Let's go, Joseph.
What do I do to report something lost?
Well, you talk to me about it first, and then we all do our bit to find it.
You the one on duty then?
Every week with a Friday in it.
Must be dead boring at times.
So, who's lost what then?
Me, an earring.
Are we talking about an item of value?
I wouldn't know. Personally, it was a gift from a friend.
Description then?
Well, they were sort of long, I suppose you'd say. And when you shook your head, you could feel them on your neck like. Dead sexy they were.
That's not much to go on. Haven't you got the other one?
Well, not on my person, no.
Where did you lose them?
It's a bit difficult to say. It could have been one of a lot of places, depending on the night.
Which places?
Well, is that necessary?
You don't want us to find it?
Well, couldn't you just, like, keep your ear to the ground? I don't want no trouble.
Trouble?
Well, I don't want to cause no trouble.
Name and address, then.
What? Well, can't I just pop in, like, now and again? Sort of. Well, who do I ask for, like, if you're not here, then?
Beck. Always insist on seeing Sergeant Beck. A sympathetic ear. He's known for it.
Right. Well, thanks. I'm sure you'll find it.
Being ever so humble, Inspector, we're only borough engineers, you know, not the Lord Chief Justice of England.
It's not the legality of the order I'm questioning, Mr. Nathan. I'm simply saying that if a little more time was granted, we might be able to arrange a more satisfactory solution.
I spent a whole afternoon with Mrs. Stamp. I explained everything. All I got for me pens was half a pound of shortbread and an earful of anecdotes about what my late aunt used to get up to in Sunday school.
Well, I'd like to try again, Mr. Nathan. All I'm asking for is your cooperation.
We sent them 5 letters, Inspector.
Yes, I know, but they don't read them, you see.
Oh, so you know about the sister in Canada? Look, I'll see what I can do. No promises, mind. At best, it'll not be worth more than a couple of days.
I am grateful, Mr. Nathan. Thank you. I'll keep in touch.
You're welcome.
We're not putting no key up there anymore.
Where will we put it then?
Put it in tea caddy, one we're not using.
But that one's empty.
Put a bit in then, just to cover, you daft lump.
What are we going to say, though, when she comes back?
She's got to be made to see, that's all.
Tell her?
No. She's got to be made to see that just because she's so good at asking questions, it don't mean there's always an answer.
Oh. She'll be used to getting the answer, that one. They write it all down. I've seen them.
No matter.
What's she got in mind, do you think?
Not that makes any difference.
I'm not so sure, Annie.
There's nothing to worry about.
Promise?
Aye, lad. I promise.
Come in. Ah. Sit down, George. Right. 5 of our largest houses, according to last month's figures. Passing through, would you say, or taking up residence?
Oh, they'll not be local, ma'am. They know what they're looking for. Silver mostly. Georgian at that. Cutlery, candlesticks, nothing too big. My guess is they're from the south. Up the motorway one day, back down the next.
Which leaves us with the age-old problem of prevention being better than cure. We're going to have to re-educate our bit of landed gentry, George. They've got to be made to realise that it doesn't just happen to other people's houses.
Yes, ma'am.
Right, another memo, then. Tell me, George, what you know about the stamps?
Stamps?
Saracen Street.
Oh, the eviction business. Well, not much, really. They've always kept themselves to themselves. They're liked, though. Most people have a good word for them.
No family.
Had a daughter. Died young. No more than a year or 2 old, they say. Biggest funeral old Billy ever gave his own daughter. Hardly never saw the like of it again. They say you went a bit funny after that.
In what way?
It's only talk, ma'am. It's just put about, that's all. They kept pretty much to the house after that. Business dropped off quite a bit. Billy didn't bother. They only came out when they had to. You can't blame them for wanting to stay, really. It's all they've known.
Thought you said you didn't know much.
Ma'am?
Pneumonia. Dr. Stainton signed this certificate. No longer with us, I'm afraid. Complications arising from congenital cerebral palsy. The baby was born handicapped.
Did you know the baby was handicapped, Joseph?
No, ma'am, I didn't.
Did anyone? The people you spoke to?
I've not heard it mentioned.
A 22-month-old baby, a handicapped baby, dies suddenly from pneumonia. An only child. The parents are apparently so grief-stricken they've virtually become recluses. No photos.
Ma'am?
There were no photographs in the house of the baby. Relatives, horses even, but none of the child.
Well, maybe they never took any.
In nearly 2 years. And the grave, it's completely neglected. Not because it became that way, it's always been like that. You can tell they've never visited it. Now, don't you find that odd, Joseph?
Too upset, perhaps?
It's as if she never existed after that day.
Can I say something, ma'am?
Yes, go ahead.
You're not going to like it.
Try me.
Well, is this strictly police business, do you think?
You're right, Joseph. I don't like it at all.
It's why, though, isn't it? That's what you've got to be asking yourself.
They need to redevelop the area, Mrs. Stamp. That's all the why they need.
Talk to them, did you?
Mrs. Stamp, don't you trust me?
Oh, you're getting there. No point in rushing things.
Look, I didn't have to see them at all. It's the duty of the police to enforce the law, not delay its operation. The council were sympathetic, of course, but a court order doesn't give us much leeway. Mr. Nathan has unofficially promised you a couple of days' grace, but no more. And frankly, I think that was very reasonable of him, under the circumstances.
Oh, very reasonable of you to try, I suppose. Oh, we're not ungrateful, lass. I wouldn't like you to think that.
I have no real right to be here, Mrs. Stamp. I am in your house with your permission. What I'm trying to say is, I hope you never give me cause to enter your house officially, because if that happens, I shall have to, well, demand of you things that now I am only asking. Do you see my position?
You official folk are good at that, believing things without knowing much. That's how you get on, I expect.
What would you have me believe?
You'll choose for yourself, I dare say.
Mrs. Stamp, what are you hiding?
Nip away with words. You put me in mind of a cousin of mine. I haven't seen him for years. Gone, probably. Terence. He could talk your ear silly, given the chance. Do you remember him, Dad? Fair hair, all to one side.
His father drowned in the bath.
Never.
Did?
His father would have been my uncle, you daft lump.
Why can't an uncle get himself drowned then?
His father was the one with the handwriting.
Mrs. Stamp!
Anyone can drown. Don't take much.
Oh, he couldn't even swim. Not many swimmers in our family.
There's more shortbread.
Well, perhaps just a small piece. Ah. David, how do you spell ferret?
Mum?
Your report on the Saracen Street incident. How many F's would you say?
F's, Mum.
Ask Sergeant Beck to come in here, will you? And if he's having his tea, tell him to bring it with him.
Mum?
Sit down, Joseph. Joseph, have you read any of David's reports lately?
No, I can't say I have, ma'am.
I'm beginning to feel like an examination board.
He seems bright enough. He's got an O level in chemistry, so he says.
Which would presumably explain why he spells ferret with a PH.
Well, he's not from the country, ma'am.
Mr. Knowles spoke through the window of his car, but as it was closed, I do not know the meaning of what he said to me. Anyway, that's not what I want to talk to you about.
The stamps.
Mr. and Mrs. Stamp, yes. The molehill out of which you think I'm making a mountain.
I wouldn't say that, ma'am. You think there's something wrong.
I believe there's something not quite right, let's put it that way. What if Instead of simply not wanting to leave the house, the situation is more that they can't leave.
Can't?
As in not able to, Sergeant. Problems arising out of so doing. I don't seem to be making myself very clear today.
Well, it seems a bit...
What?
Well, with respect, ma'am, a bit airy-fairy.
Does it now? And what about the proverbial copper's hunch, eh? Not allowed to put in an appearance above the rank of sergeant, is that it?
You could be right, ma'am.
Law of averages? Well, let's assume I am. What do we have?
Not much. Elderly couple, well-liked, childless, refused to move for reasons unknown.
Be suspicious, Joseph. You're good at that. Where's the weak link, eh?
It would have to be the baby.
Go on.
Caring folks, the Stamps.
Meaning?
They wouldn't have let the grave go, not like that.
They didn't exactly let it go, did they? They never visited it. As far as we know, the last time they were in that churchyard was the day of the funeral. So why, Joseph?
The memory of it all. They took it hard at the time. They'd want to forget it.
Every year, on the anniversary of her death, the local paper prints a memorial notice. For little Emily, never absent from our hearts and thoughts this day and always. They've never forgotten. So why, Joseph?
I don't know, ma'am. And if you don't mind me saying so, I don't think I want to know.
Thanks, Joseph. That'll be all.
I don't want to, Annie.
It's for the best, lad. Won't take long.
Yes. Yes, I did say that, but... All right, all right. Which hospital? Is it serious? Well, in that case, I really think it can wait until... Yes, I know. Thank you, George.
Am I serious?
They wouldn't have let me in if you were.
They draw the curtains round now and again.
They always do that. The doctor says your heart fluttered a bit, that's all. Made you lose consciousness.
I came over all dizzy.
You should rest more.
I do naught else.
You'll be back home in a couple of days, you'll see.
Where's Annie?
She sent her love.
She won't come out then?
No.
You'll be seeing her?
I shall have to. Mr. Stamp, the next time the bailiff calls, the police will have to support his action. It's a court order, you see.
Do you want us to go?
I'm afraid that doesn't count.
But they listen to you.
Not in the way you mean. I have to take orders too.
Aye, it's what everyone does, isn't it? Take orders from someone, give them to somebody else. We move each other about like a game of bloody drafts. Other folk don't think we know what to do with ourselves, I suppose. Is that it, do you think? Making up ways to lead our lives and getting other folk to watch we do. Horses don't do that. Some are a bit stroppy, but they don't do that. Horses are human. When?
Very soon. Mr. Stamp, why don't you want to leave? Can't you tell me?
I like you, lass. You care.
How is he?
He's well. There's nothing to worry about. There's not even any real treatment. He's just a rest.
Oh, thank God for that. Oh, it was good of you to come.
How did it happen?
Oh, he never was any good at the digging much.
Digging?
The garden. Out at back. In a state it was.
Your husband was admitted to hospital at 1:30 this morning.
We've done something a long time back, Billy and me.
How old was she?
"22 months, almost to the day. No little peaky face. She'd smile, though. Not that she had much reason to do that, but she'd manage here and there. Spastic, they call it now. All down one side. Inside, too. Lungs. Oh, so much trouble getting the air into her. You wonder why she tried so hard. But she did. She tried until she couldn't no more. And then she stopped.
Tell me it all. It's easier in one go.
Law comes first with you, though, don't it? As to.
I'm not a uniform all the way through, you know.
Maybe not. All right, then. We had to keep her close. Not out there in ground she never knew. She's warm here.
But the funeral.
Earth. Just earth. Outside the casket and in. No problem, you see. Billy doing it all.
And she's been here all these years.
Where she belongs. Oh, we couldn't leave her, could we? All by herself, covered with all this old concrete people going and coming, walking on her.
Is this where your husband was digging?
Oh, I'm no up with my back. And Billy was a lot younger when he put her there. I shouldn't have let him, I know. But we wanted to take her with us. Our only chance.
Does anyone else know?
Only you. That's all.
Nobody's ever been down here.
This is a private place, lass.
Mrs. Stamp, I know your daughter was very ill.
She was. Slow like. You could see it happening a little bit each day. Billy said she weren't meant to be born, Mum. All that fighting. Life's hard enough as it is. Sometimes you know every word someone says, just as if they were your own. They sort of say it for you. He said, if she were a horse, I'd know what to do.
I know what it must have been like. Watching her, waiting. Annie, did you kill your baby?
Come on, Inspector, you know the matter's out of our hands. The council have met all legal obligations regarding the residents of Saracen Street. I can't stick my neck out again.
It is important.
To take precedence over the rehousing of 40-odd families in new flats, it would have to be. Look, the only thing I can suggest is you get in touch with the contractors.
What are the chances there, do you think?
None at all, I should say, but what have you got to lose? Sorry I can't be more helpful, Inspector. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Bread and butter pudding with currants.
Nice.
They pull the curtains round sometimes.
Country pattern.
Not much room in here when they do. Everyone crowds about. Who's at home, then?
She had to know. I told her.
Had to.
Only her.
She'll have written it down. You promised.
You were right after all then, ma'am.
Was I now?
Sign of a good copper, they say. Hunches?
Really?
You're quite happy then with it all?
Never felt better.
I mean about the baby.
You read the death certificate, Joseph?
Yes, and believed it.
So?
So I didn't have a hunch, did I?
Joseph, if I asked you the name of the man who always lets you know each time we get a load of cheap tellies for sale on our packs, what would you say?
I'd plead ignorant, ma'am.
And I'd accept that, wouldn't I? Your trouble is you just can't bear me knowing something you don't.
No, I wouldn't say that.
No, you wouldn't.
So that's it then?
Couldn't have put it better myself, Joseph.
I expect the big lad to be moving now, the stamps.
Haven't gone yet.
They will, though, won't they?
That's what we're going to find out, Joseph. If I can handle our man right, we'll get the time we need.
Good morning, my name's Darbley. Inspector Darbley, Hartley Police.
Oh, good heavens, you're just the people I wanted to see. Charles? Charles, there's an Inspector Darbley to see you and a Sergeant,
Beck.
Of course it is.
Can't stop, I'm afraid. Breaks the rhythm.
Would you like us to call it another time, Mr. Pendle?
Well, supposing I said yes. A little joke, Inspector. You're not serious.
Well, it really isn't anything official, Mr. Pendle.
Can I start by offering you a drink, perhaps? Sherry? We have some beer somewhere, I think.
Thank you, no.
I thought so. There you are. Well, I'll leave you to it then. We can meet up later and have a little chat. Oh, uniforms are so smart these days. Don't overdo it, Charles. Remember your operation.
That was 7 years ago. For blocked sinuses. Oh. I'm not fit enough to keep fit. Always been the trouble. Well, now, how can I help the great British police?
Mr. Pendle, you are the contractor on the new development at the Saracen Street side.
My company is.
I need a favour from you.
Now, don't tell me. One of the new flats. You have a friend of a friend.
No, Mr. Pendle, I do not have a friend.
Occupational hazard, no doubt.
You intend commencing demolition this weekend, I understand.
That is our plan.
I want to ask you to delay it a week.
For what reason, may I ask?
I'm afraid I can't say.
Oh, you can't say.
No.
Do you realise how long I've already been delayed, Inspector?
Yes, I do.
And that, as the saying goes, time is money?
I had heard.
Well, it's true. You take my word.
So it's no, then?
I'm afraid it is. Most definitely.
I didn't suggest tea, did I? Is that in order? There's nothing wrong, is there?
No, nothing wrong, Mrs. Pendle. Just a request, really.
Oh, good. Well, now you're here, you might as well have a look at our burglar alarm. Well, it wouldn't be too much trouble with it. Only you people are always going on about prevention, aren't you?
Sergeant Beck will help you. If you'll excuse me, Mrs. Pendle. Mr. Pendle.
I see they leave plenty of hem on those skirts. Goodbye, Inspector.
Goodbye.
Now then, Sergeant, do you see these little sensors?
Sophie, the alarm works perfectly well. It should, for the amount it cost.
I was only asking for a professional opinion, Charles. The sergeant will know what I mean.
Ah, your husband's quite right, Mum. It's a perfectly sound system. There aren't many who get past that.
But presumably it only takes one.
Oh, don't let that worry you. That sort only bother with the big houses.
Yes, well, thank you, Sergeant.
I'll leave your husband with a few tips, ma'am. Inside information, like.
Oh, that is kind. Well, I'll leave you to it then. I'm sure you must have lots of things to do. Now, Charles, don't be grumpy.
Nice lady, your wife.
Sorry?
Dependable type, I'd say. Expects much the same, I wouldn't be surprised. Is that your car outside, sir?
It is.
Nice job. Plenty of room.
Sergeant, is there anything you actually want?
Well, I'd like to ask a favour too, sir. The same one as my inspector, as it turns out.
Absolutely not. I thought I made myself perfectly clear to the inspector.
Yes, you did, sir. This yours, sir?
No.
On the drive it was. Near your car. Back seat, actually. Your wife's, must be. Looks a bit valuable to me. Better check, I think.
No. No, that won't be necessary. As I know for a fact that that does not belong to my wife. I've never seen it before.
Lost, then? Lost property. It happens all the time.
I dare say.
Right. Well, there's not much point bothering your wife, if you're sure. One earring. Would you mind signing there, sir?
A week, she said.
Well, she was skimping it a bit.
What?
Erring on the side of caution. 2 weeks would make it comfortable. Thank you, sir.
So how did you manage that?
Reasonable bloke, I thought. It's how you handle him.
Oh, what did he say?
Rest in peace, he said. Best that way, he thought.
Well, quite appropriate, really.
That's what I thought.